All right, so chapter 12 of our book looks at communication and interpersonal skills. And so, what we're trying to focus on here is as a manager or in working with managers, how do we want to understand what communication skills and processes are important and what are some key interpersonal skills? So, our first topic that we look at is the idea of the communication process. And we start with a couple of definitions. So, first of all, what is communication? And so what's key here is that we can think that we're communicating, but if we are not transmitting understanding and meaning from one person to another or one person to many or collectively, this process of creating understanding and meaning is really inherent and important in what we understand as communication. And so then we have our communication process, which our book likes to make simple ideas really complicated. So we're going to look at this 7-part process of how communication works. So what are we talking about here? So we've got our sender. So let's pretend that I'm going to send you an email. So this is me, the sender. I have a reason, purpose to send you that email. Let's say I'm going to ask you to perform a particular task. So I'm going to think of a way that I'm going to send that. In this case, it's going to be email. So I'm going to encode my message in some way by drafting a message to you. So I'm going to maybe think about how I'm going to ask you to do that. I'm going to describe what the task may be, and maybe I'm going to think about the tone that I want to communicate to you. So then I've got the actual message that I'm sending to you via a channel. In this case, we're talking about an email. That message then gets through and is received in your inbox. So it's received in your inbox where it's transferred from the cloud or wherever and is decoded onto your computer, and then you receive it. And in that process, you are going to also interpret and decode that message. You might have thoughts about it. You might say, why is Rachel asking me to do this? This isn't my job. Or you might say, awesome, I've been hoping Rachel asked me to do this job. Or you might think, wow, I'm really busy. How am I going to get this done, right? So there's a process that is kind of going from sender to receiver, and there's lots of different things along the way that can potentially go wrong. And we also have this idea of feedback. So you might reply to this email, you might call me, you might catch me in the hallway later and say, hey, Rachel, thanks for sending that email, blah, 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 whatever. And then we also have noise, right? So noise is not just like, it can also be other things that are going on that are either distracting, either the sender, the reader, the channel, anything can be adding to the noise, which is something that is dispersing or complicating the message. And I'm sure we've all had that where, maybe we're so busy, there's so much noise in our head and there's so many other things going on that we've misunderstood or missed messages in some way. And our book also talks about the idea of media richness. So this is where we're trying to layer the way in which we're communicating. So for example, if we're communicating in person to somebody, we've got the experience of trying to just decode or decipher their message through their voice, the words they're using, their body language, the way that we feel when we're interacting with that person. So there's layers of things going on there that are contributing to the richness of that experience. Whereas something like email or a text message lacks the same depth of media richness. So it can be much more open to different types of interpretation, and are probably better used for just communicating short ideas and tasks rather than trying to necessarily communicate meaning, because it lacks that richness. So that is the book's description of the communication process and all the little steps along the way. Next video, we're going to have a look at some of the types of communication that exist.